guys, welcome back to a page in the chapter, or welcome if you are new here. My name is Paige and today we are talking through my September TBR. I will talk about this more in my August highlights video, but my physical TBR is not looking in a good shape. It was not the month that I wanted it to be, so we're gonna try and turn September into the month I want it to be and only read physical books in the month of September. I think that will be a little ambitious, but I do plan out my autumn TBRs like the whole year. I collect books for these and think about these, so I do think that I will be able to read everything physically. So I do plan to read everything physically and get as many books off my physical TBR as possible. There are some books that I really want to buy for my October TBR, and then like getting into like Christmas TBRs and things like that, there's just books that I want to buy. So if I can get as many physical books read this month as possible, hopefully by the end of the year we will come out kind of on top of it. I would really like to get my physical TBR to around 50 or less than 50, but that is very ambitious. This is also a bigger TBR than I normally set myself because I normally like to allow myself room to mood read. I don't think that will be happening this month again though, just because I save so many books for this time of year that if I don't get to them this month, next month is going to be so overloaded with books. So it's a bigger TBR. Now I have filled my September TBR with a lot of books that are gonna get me into the autumn spirit and the Halloween spirit without being purely that vibe. You know, these are kind of like transitional, like summer into autumn books. They are kind of back to school vibe books. September always makes me think of back to school because in the UK that is when schools go back. I know in the US it's a little bit earlier. Hopefully this will give you guys some amazing recs for your autumn TBRs. There's still plenty of time to get all of the kind of cozy books in. It is a month of cozy fantasies. I don't think there's a lot of romance on this list, so apologies if you are here for the romance content. As soon as the weather starts to get autumnal, I just go straight to cozy fantasies, I'm afraid. But I will of course be vlogging every week of September and October and just the rest of the year as I normally do. So if I do find any kind of cozy romance novels to curl up with, then you will see those in those. Which brings me to my next point. If you guys would like to stick around for more content and see the weekly vlogs and see what I find to read in these months, then do please feel free to hit that big red subscribe button down below. Stay tuned for future content. I upload every single Wednesday and every single Sunday, so there is no shortage of bookish content here for you to enjoy. Also do feel free to check me out on Bookstagram at apaigeinchapter because I'm just loving Bookstagram lately and I'm finding it so much fun. So you guys should go look at the pretty books over there. I have my pumpkin mug, so we are definitely getting into the autumn spirit in this house. I will also be decorating this week and I think I'm gonna vlog it, so stay tuned for that vlog. And without further ado, let's talk about my September TBR. The first book on this TBR is a book that I have been saving since January. When I say that I plan these TBRs and account for these TBRs and put stuff aside for these autumnal TBRs all year, I mean it. In fact, I actually think I bought this book in December because I don't think there was an embargo on it. The book came out in January, which is why I associate it with January, but I think I may have bought it in December of last year. And that is Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherworlds. I read Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies last year. It was actually my 100th book of last year and I adored it. It had so many cozy vibes. I loved it so much that I bought multiple editions of the sequel. I bought multiple editions of the first book, and I actually read it because I wanted to catch up on like fantasy books that people were reading and Fairy Loot books that had been done in the past, because I had just started working at Fairy Loot at the end of last year and I wanted to kind of just get the vibe of what the books are and have things to talk about with my co-workers. So I read Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies and I adored it so much. It's honestly one of my favourite books in the whole entire world. So I've been eagerly anticipating reading this book and I really wanted to save it for an atmospheric time. The first book was very, very wintry. It takes place in this kind of frozen icescape and this like small town in like a snowy region, and they have to build log fires and like trek through the snow every day. It was very, very wintry. And the cover is giving autumn. And then Heather Fawcett, the author, posted onto her Instagram that she really associates this book with autumn and it feels very autumnal to her. So I have been saving this for this TBR. I don't think it's going to give like massively like October vibes, and I do want to leave room on October's TBR for like Halloween reads and some witchy reads and things like that. And I do think this will actually be a very good transitional book. I'm hoping for like a rainy day in September to just kind of curl up with this book and read it and just let myself start to really feel in the mood for kind of coziness and nights in. If you aren't aware and you've never heard of the Emily Wilde series before, Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies follows our main character, Emily Wilde, and she is a professor and she studies fairies and is a professor in the study of fairies at this university, and she is currently working on putting together a complete encyclopedia of fairies and all different types of fairies, different fairies that are specific to different regions of the world, different interactions people have had with these fairies. And this leads her to this little frozen town, and she is so focused on her academics that she doesn't really get along very well with the people of this town, which leads her colleague Wendell to come and join her and bail her out. And we follow this kind of rivals to lovers that it takes place between Emily and Wendell, but the romance very much takes a backseat in these books. If you're not a huge romance lover and you just want fantasy, I don't categorize these as romantasy at all. I keep them firmly on my fantasy shelf because I don't think the romance subplot is a big enough aspect of the story to warrant these being moved to my romantasy shelf. But it is a very sweet romance too, even though it does very much take a backseat to the fantasy. I really, really enjoyed reading it, and I absolutely adore Wendell, and I can't wait to read more of him in this book, and I'm so excited. The next book that I have to share with you is actually a reread, and that is A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. I haven't read this book in 2 or 3 years. I was still doing my undergrad when I first read this book, and I read it when the sequels weren't out yet, so I just never got around to ever reading the completed Charlemagne's trilogy, and I really want to read the rest of these books, but I don't remember enough about A Deadly Education to just jump straight into the others. I remember the ending, and I remember being absolutely gagged by the ending. And I remember really enjoying this book, surprisingly so, because I'm not a massive fan of Naomi Novik's other books, but I really want to get to this again this September and continue with this series in the latter portion of this year. This book very much tells the story of this deadly school, and it's a very setting driven book in that the school very much feels like kind of its own character and is kind of like this sentient being, and there's no teachers or anything at this school if I'm remembering correctly, and in order to graduate from this school the students just simply have to survive and then battle their way out of this school. The school's going to keep throwing like monsters and things at them whilst they study there, and then to graduate they have to kind of fight their way out, and the learning aspect comes from them going out of their way to learn things about different creatures so that they can possibly stand a chance at surviving this school. I remember really, really enjoying it, and this is quite a short book in and of itself. So how many pages is this? It's about a 300-page book. It gives dark, cozy vibes, but it also very much fits with this kind of back to school vibe that I'm going for, because we've got a little bit of like dark academia going on here. I remember really, really enjoying this book, and I cannot wait to read it again. I think it will be quite a quick read and very much fit the vibe that I'm going for this September. My next book doesn't necessarily fit any of the vibes that I have said that I was looking for this September, but I just really, really want to read it, so I'm putting it on my September TBR, and that is Bonded by Thorns by Elizabeth Helen. This is a fae romantasy book, but it is a Why Choose. The only other Why Choose I have read is Pucking Around by Emily Rath, and I enjoyed that more than I expected to. And I think this is also a Beauty and the Beast retelling. I've talked about this before. I'm really reaching the end of my tether with romantasy as being Beauty and the Beast retellings. Please, for the love of God, choose a different Disney movie. There's so many villains and options that you could choose. Like, what is it about Beauty and the Beast that just has everyone in such a chokehold? Is it the library? Like, just write a library into whichever book you choose to write. Like, please, can we stop with Beauty and the Beast retellings? I don't even know for sure that this is one. The description just kind of sounds like it is, so apologies to this author if this is not a Beauty and the Beast retelling, but still, generally, my point still stands. Let's let go of Beauty and the Beast, just let it go. So this follows our main character Rosie, and when her father goes missing, she goes looking for him and ends up in this enchanted kind of mansion. And this place that she finds herself in is in the land of the Fae, and she is trapped with 4 princes. And these 4 princes are cursed to take the form of a wolf every single night. And Rosie ends up enlisted to help them all find their mates so that this curse will be broken. I'm intrigued to see what actually entices her to help these princes, but as she is helping them like locate their mates, she ends up realizing that she is kind of falling for them herself, and so this is a why choose. I'm very intrigued to see how this is written because it's actually quite a short book, and the other why choose that I read was 700 pages long, but I did kind of like the length of that book and the pacing of that book because I felt it really worked with the fact that we had 3 love interests. So I'm a little skeptical about the length of this one, but I've heard good things about it. I've seen a lot of really positive talk about this book on social media, so I really want to read it and see if I like it because I haven't heard anything bad about this book. I've only seen positive reviews, so I'm very much intrigued. The next book I have to share with you from my September TBR is Can't Spell Treason Without Tea. I have been saving this one for a little while, just waiting for like when I was in the mood for it or just the right weather for it, and it just hasn't happened, and I feel like that is because it was supposed to be on one of my kind of autumnal month TBRs, and I feel like this just fits September a little better than October. As I've already said, I want some witchy romances in October. I want some books that are gonna fit a Halloween vibe as well as a perfect autumnal vibe. So this I think is just going to be cozy, and I want it in September. So this book follows our main characters Raina and Kianth. They have always dreamed about running away and leaving their dangerous lives behind and opening a bookshop, and one day they actually do that and they run away to this little town in like dragon country, and they open this bookshop and they live this very cozy life, but it is not as simple as they think it's going to be. Let me just read you one of the sections of this blurb because this is what sold me on this book, and I think it's going to sell you too. Raina and Kianth must face mishaps, mysteries, dragons, and a murderous queen throwing the realm's biggest temper tantrum. Together, these 2 women will discover just what they mean to each other and their world. A heartwarming journey brimming with peril, magic, and a love of tea. It sounds gloriously cozy. I cannot wait to drink so much tea whilst I read this book. It has dragons in it, it is cozy. It sounds like it's going to be a sapphic romance. It kind of reminds me, feels like it's going to have the same kind of feel as Legends and Lattes. This sounds wonderfully cozy, and I think it's just going to be the perfect addition to any autumn TBR, and specifically to my September one. There are not many continuations on this TBR. I'm not making a huge effort to continue any series, but again, that is because I have been planning this TBR for a very long time. But there is one continuation on this TBR, and that is Foxglove by Adeline Grace. This is the sequel to Belladonna. I bought Belladonna back in June. It was one of the books I picked up from my trip to Edinburgh because I finally found a hardcover copy of Belladonna, so I picked that up straight away. And I am so excited for the sequel. I can't believe how much I actually enjoyed Belladonna because I do feel like I'm stepping away from young adult fantasy. But Belladonna didn't feel that young adult. It didn't feel that young. It was very, very addictive. And I loved the Regency setting. I loved the exploration of death and grief, and I adored it so much. So Belladonna follows our main character, Signa Farrow, and death follows her wherever she goes. She has ended up jumping from distant relative to distant relative, very series of unfortunate events vibes, until she finds herself at Bourne Grove. And when Death attempts to follow her to Thorn Grove, Signa finally stands her ground and decides to investigate what is going on, and it has this real kind of murder mystery vibe to it. This book is also Victorian, I want to say, and I just love the character development of Signa, going from this young woman who wants nothing more than to ignore all of these weird things that are happening around her and ignore all of the death in her life, and is just desperate to get married and live this very normal life in the Victorian age. She very much kind of grows from that through the journey and the murder mystery that's afoot in that book, and reaches a point where she is very willing to embrace the weird things that are going on around her. And I loved that book so much. I flew through it. It had the perfect cozy vibes, and we didn't have the warmest of Junes, so it still fit the weather vibe, but part of me did wish that I had saved it for autumn, because it really did have that feel to it. But never fear, because there is a sequel, and I'm hoping this will have just the same vibes and be just as enjoyable for me to read this September. So where we saw Signa dealing with death in the first book, we see her handling fate in this book. It sounds very interesting, very cozy. There is another murder mystery kind of vibe to this book, and I'm very excited to see what Adeline Grace has in store for this book. And the next book on this list is Long Live Evil by Sarah Rees Brennan. As soon as I got this book, I knew that it had to be on this TBR. It sounds so perfect, and it is taking genuine effort to hold off on reading this book, and it might be one of the first that I pick up on my September TBR. So this follows our main character Ray, and when her whole life falls apart, she really relies on books to get her through it. And then when she is dying, she is pushed to make a very dark deal, and she seizes a second chance at living by entering into the world of one of her favourite fantasy books. And we follow our main character as she gathers all of the villains of this world and this story and gathers them under her evil leadership. And we follow this kind of group of evil villains as they cause absolute mayhem in the kingdom and reach a point where they really have to fight to survive. It sounds so perfect. It's got this evil villain vibe that I think is perfect for autumn, and if I could wait to read this, I would probably save it for my October TBR, but I want to read it so badly that I'm gonna read it in September. Maybe I can hold out until the end of September so that it's a transitional September to October book, since it does have this kind of evil villain vibe. But I am so excited about this. It sounds so good, and I have heard such good things, and I cannot wait to read this. And then the final book on my September TBR is again another one that is going to be perfect for bridging the gap between cozy school vibes and then moving into more magical October vibes. I do have to say that I'm not an autumnal horror reader. I'm not a Halloween horror reader. I am more Halloween Town Halloween than horror Halloween, and I just think this is going to fit so perfectly to help move into this kind of cozy magic sphere, and that is The Temptation of Magic by Megan Scott. This follows our main character Nicole, and she has a power that would get her killed if anybody found out that she had this power. If the governing body of supernaturals found out she had this power, it would not be good. So she decides to hide out in this small university town and take in a lot of the art. It is surrounded by all of the art in this very small university town, and whilst trying to investigate this art, she ends up being forced into an alliance with a character called Kian, and she starts to grow feelings for Kian through this very tenuous alliance that they form. But if he were to ever find out what she truly was, then he would start to hunt her as well. It is described as a forbidden romance. It has this kind of school university setting, but it also has forbidden romance and magic, and I just think this is going to be an absolutely perfect autumn read if you're someone like me and wants academia vibes in September, but then witchy romances, magic romances, cozy fantasies and Halloween town vibes in October. This just feels like it's going to be perfect for either month, and I really hope that this does not let me down because I have such high hopes for this. If you have read it, let me know. I'm very eager to hear your thoughts. And this is the final book on my September TBR. So here are all of the books on my September TBR. I have 7 books on this TBR. As I said, I want to read as much in physical form and get as much off my physical TBR as I possibly can this month. Now, there are some new releases that I'm excited about, most notably Wild Eyes by Elsie Silver. So it is possible that I will go and buy a copy of that and then hopefully read it straight away. In that sense, I'm not getting anything off my physical TBR, but I'm also technically not adding to it if I read it straight away. And it's very possible that I will read that this month, but I'm still really hoping to get to all 7 of these books. Have high hopes that I will be able to. I read fantasy a lot slower than I read romance, but a lot of these are just kind of cozy vibes, short, and I think that I will hopefully be able to get through all of them. If you have read any of the books on this list, then do let me know what you thought of them. I would love to know before I go in. And if you are adding any of these books to your TBR after I recommended them, I would also love to know that too. I will of course be updating you on my progress in vlogs throughout the month and my wrap up at the end of the month and over on my Bookstagram account. So do please feel free to subscribe if you want to see the progress of this and my thoughts on these books. I upload every Wednesday and every Sunday, and there is a vlog every single week, so you won't miss any of my thoughts on these if you subscribe. And then there is also my Bookstagram, of course, where I will be updating over on there as well. I hope you guys are having a fantastic week, you're enjoying everything you are reading, and there are no reading slumps in your future. And I will see you for my next video. Bye guys.